So, purpose of today is to give you a bit of an overview about the subject, to give you some insights into what to expect, to talk about what the first assignment involves, and then also towards the end to talk about the travel logistics. So, and again, for the what I'm calling the inbound students, so the students who already live in Vietnam, they can drop off at that point. If they were actually in the room with us, I'd be encouraging them to stay so that they can give you some insights. You should be able to control your own microphones, turn on and off. Just stop me if you've got questions, okay? It's going to be a really small group and we've got to get used to working together. And I can go on and on and on and on. So yeah, stop me and say, move on, you're wasting my time, or elaborate on that, whatever you think we need to do. So let me just try and move there we go. So a little bit about me first. This slide pack will be available to you. In fact, it's already available to you in the Canvas shell, although the first slide I think still had 2018 written on it. I have updated them, just everything except for the first slide. So that's me. Well, actually, that's what I looked like about 8 years ago. I'm a little bit taller now and I have different glasses. Otherwise, I'm exactly the same. Really easy to contact me. You've got email. Yeah, that's my phone number. Already, most of you have joined the little WhatsApp group. And my experience, this is the third time I've run this study tour. And my experience is that using WhatsApp is really helpful. We'll actually create a WhatsApp group for each of the groups as well, because they're really good ways of communicating. But also when we're in Vietnam, you won't always have access to a computer. We'll be running in a very intensive mode over the 5 days that we're working together. You'll need to count those 5 days as the full 5 days. Do not be expecting to be able to run away and do things at night or in the other, early morning or anything. I am taking all of your time during those 5 days. But we will have a bit of fun with it as we go. Why do I teach this? Partly because they asked me nicely. My experience, I'm actually a lawyer, which again, something I probably need to get out of the way very early. I understand most people think, well, there are very few people come home at the end of the day and say, today was a great day, I spent it with a lawyer. But my experience is very commercial. I've been a fintech, a financial services technology entrepreneur. I've taken 2 companies to listing. Neither of them have done spectacularly well, but neither of them are dead. So unlike most of the case studies you deal with where everything fails absolutely or succeeds spectacularly, I sit somewhere in between. I've also been a corporate lawyer for, it says almost 30 years there, and it's literally almost 30 years. I will have been admitted for 30 years in November this year. And my experience is largely in the M&A on the equity side, quite a bit of foreign investment also on the equity side, and a real focus on fintech. I did quite a lot of resources projects and privatizations early in my life. As a lawyer, but from the 90s onwards, I was involved almost solely in technology and equity fundraising, with a lot of that work initially in China. So while I have a lot of Asian exposure in a business sense, I don't have a huge amount of Vietnam sense and experience, although more and more I work there in a number of with different hats on. And I guess what I'm doing with this subject is very much focusing on the cultural and the business practice elements of the subject. And so if you look at this subject and the way that it's worded, the course learning outlines, we'll get to them in a moment. They include things like at the end of this course, you'll be able to understand the cultural differences between yourself and an Asian experience. That's not true. That is not going to happen. We've got 2 lots of students here. We've got inbound and outbound students. If either group walk away thinking, I now know everything I need to know about either a foreign company making an investment in Vietnam or in Asia generally, or anything. I know everything I need to know about being a Vietnamese company that is taking foreign investment, then I will have completely failed. What I hope you will walk away from this subject is a toolkit and a set of questions and a methodology for thinking about the ways in which you would approach that kind of investment, whether as an investor or as an investee, how you would look at the risks in particular. I won't actually go through here because we'll end up caught up, but this slide, when you pull this slide out, it will take you directly to the World Bank. Actually, I say that, and now I am going to do it. She says, and it's not working. It should, what's happening here? Have you lost my screen?
No, I still got you, Kath, but
so
I can just see the World Bank.
Okay,
slide.
Oh, can you see the slide or can you see the World Bank website?
Just the slide.
Okay, let me just do a new share then. Sorry, just mess around. Something's going funny with my computer, which just because of the nature of the screen I'm using. Come on, share, baby, share.
Sounds like my computer.
Okay, I'll move it out of share and then I'll start to share again, just so that you can see this. One of the things I would suggest that you have a look at before you go, inbound or outbound student. Sorry, I'm assuming you can see the World Bank website now. I'm moving up and down there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
There's a whole lot of data about Vietnam, Asia generally, but Vietnam in particular, which you can drill down into in as much or as little detail as you like. I'll give you some really good overview information. I'm going to rudely mute you so that I can hear myself, and unmute if you want to say anything. But you can drill into this information and get a real sense of the size of the market and the growth. We'll get a really good economic briefing when we're there, but it's a really good idea, given the nature of this course, to get a general understanding of the economics of the country before we go, so that you can have some understanding. And I think that's probably the best place for you to go to do that. I'm just going to fiddle back in here so I can, that is not what it's supposed to be doing. I'll reach over and get my mouse. Usually I stand up, and what's actually happening today is I'm now sitting, and that's why life is difficult. It's just been a really long day. Okay, I'm not going to go outside. Should be able to see the World Bank slide again. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. And so now, bit of an idea about where we're staying. So we're going to be in Ho Chi Minh, also called Saigon. I don't know how many, whether any of you have ever been there before. So have any of you been there before?
No.
No?
Nope.
I haven't.
Okay, it's interesting. It's, well, I think you'll have a ball. It's a fascinating and beautiful city. The Vietnamese people who are in our group, I've worked with both of them before. I've taught them design thinking in the exec MBA program in Vietnam. And they are rightfully very proud of the city that they work in. Actually, one of them is not Vietnamese, he's Australian, but he has been living in Vietnam now for a couple of years. It's an incredibly busy city, and it's been changing very, very dramatically. So it's growing absolutely tenfold at the moment, although as the data from the World Bank will show you that growth has been slowing down a little bit. I'm going to recommend that you base yourselves in District 1. So the way this course is going to work, we are going to we're going to spend a lot of our time in District 1. District 1 is the centre of the city. The slide that I've got shows the Rex Hotel, just because that's where I've stayed most of the times that I've gone before. This time I'm staying at the Grand Hotel, which is another hotel in that District 1 area. I think we've got 5 days of classes, and on 3 of those days we'll be in District 7, which is where the RMIT campus is, or at least we'll start our day there. And the other 2 days we start in District 1. But I think we finish in District 1 almost every day. There might be one that we don't. I just don't have it off the top of my head. The districts are not numbered chronologically. Then I feel like RMIT has taken its building numbering system from Vietnam. Like we seem to number a building as we add one. There's no logic to it. You know, building 56 sits right next to building 13. Well, the order of the districts is really the order in which they became developed, not the order in which anything happened. Sorry, I'm just checking to make sure that messages coming through to me are not from students trying to get into this course, and it's not. It doesn't look like it's a very long way between District 1 and District 7, but the reality is in peak hour it could be as much as a 40-minute cab drive. Or probably not 40 minutes, but at least half an hour, because the traffic is very, very busy. What I will do every morning is about an hour before our scheduled start is I will be taking a cab in and from District 1, and anybody who wants to join me will be welcome. And if there are more people than cabs, I will pay for the second cab or Grab. In fact, I use Grab most of the time over there because it's just easy to do. Grab is a version of Uber, effectively. I think Grab actually purchased Uber in Vietnam about 18 months ago, so same sort of thing. So we'll probably get some Grabs across. I will also, the first time we went and we did this tour, we hired a bus. Yeah, well, basically what I was saying is I won't hire a bus. We're going to negotiate cabs, which might mean that I'll be asking you guys to put some cash in for cabs if you need them and grab receipts so that I can reimburse you. It all gets a little bit messy, but at the end of the day, it costs the university less and it wastes a lot less of our time. But the point of this slide is to say my preference is, and our recommendation always is, that we stay in the same district, that you get somewhere to stay in District 1. I think particularly for those of you who haven't been to Vietnam before and you want to get a bit of sightseeing in the tiny bit of time you'll have available to do that, District 1 would be the better place for you to stay. But we will start, for those of you who like to sleep in, you might find that staying somewhere nearer the university in District 7 works better for you. And this is a postgraduate course. You are all adults, so I don't mind. But I will be ferrying everybody who is in District 1 who wants to join me from the Grand Hotel every morning that we need to start in District 7. Just so you know. So let me just share my screen again so you can see it. I think, oh, sorry, let me work out what's going on there. That needs to disappear. I'm a much better lecturer than I am technology expert, as you can probably tell already, I hope. So let's talk about the course itself so I can move on. It's this, again, the idea is that it's a bigger group than we've actually got, but I'm actually really happy with a small group because those of you who've done any work in Asia before will know that the big meeting room is not actually a feature of the Asian business landscape. So one of the great things about having a small group is it's much easier for us to go and visit a whole lot of people. So the course itself, it's designed on the basis that there will be people from a range of different courses. As it's turned out, I think we've got one person with doing a Masters of Finance, one person who's doing a law degree, a Juris Doctor, and the rest of you are doing either the Executive MBA or an MBA. So we're very heavy on the MBAs. I think we'll have 9 of us all up, 8 or 9 in the course in total. 2 are based in Vietnam, and the rest, I believe, are based in Australia somewhere. So the idea is, though, that each of you will think about the area of business that you're most interested in and where you want to use your skills, draw on your skills to look at a project around making an investment in Vietnam. So in your teams, you are likely to work in teams, although because I only have 1 lawyer and I want each of you to be able to consider what the legal risks might be, that lawyer might be a resource that's available to both teams, as long as his name is Louis, as long as Louis is happy to do it that way. He's not with us to say so at the moment, but the indication he had this morning was that he would be. Effectively, you'll be working in teams and you will need to buy some time with your legal advisors from time to time. So, as I started to say before, the course learning objectives talk about on successful completion of the course, you'll be able to do all of these things. You will have exposure to all these things. Whether or not you can assess the influence of cultural factors on individual, business or professional behaviour flawlessly in any Asian context, I think if you think you can do that, then you probably will have missed the point of this course. I think what you're going to be able to do is come out with a framework for considering making investments or receiving investments in a multicultural context, and to start to think about what kind of questions you would ask, what kind of due diligence you would do, and what kind of strategies you would come up with for making the most effective investment. So what this means for us is that we're going to explore all of the things on these slides. By the way, all these pictures are from previous iterations of the course, actually. And how we're going to do this is we're going to pretty much treat it like a game. It's going to be a bit like The Apprentice, only everybody's going to win. The game I'm going to ask you to play goes effectively like this. I am the CEO of a large Australian-based conglomerate entity. So when I say conglomerate, I'm thinking about an entity like Westpac. Let's say something around the size of Westpac, when Coles was still part of the whole picture. Basically, in theory, every asset is for sale at any given time. What a conglomerate like Wesfarmers does is it finds investments and it grows them. It sees what it can do with them, and then ultimately it disposes of them, or it feeds the income from those investments back to its shareholders in some way. So I want you to imagine that I am the CEO of a company that's backed by the university and is a conglomerate of some substantial size. And I have put together you as my crack team of business and subject matter experts. You are going to arrive in Vietnam, where you will meet with the 2 local business experts that we have. And I'm going to put you into teams who are going to look at opportunities for us, our conglomerate, making an investment in Vietnam. And at the end of the week, your job will be to pitch as a team a recommendation for an investment. So when you pitch that, you are going to base your pitching on the observations and the conversations that you've had while you're in Vietnam. And then subsequently, you're going to support that with some desk research to give me a strategic plan. Hopefully I'll go to the next slide, because I think it's, I'm talking about this in a way that the slides, I'm talking about it without looking at my slides, which is quite common for me. I don't really like slides. So hopefully I'll move them around and make it match. So how we're going to make our investment decision is, before you leave, you're going to give me some information about yourselves and what you're interested in, what you already know about, and you're also going to tell me what it is that you want to learn more about. I'm going to do my best from that to put you into teams of people who have diverse approaches to thinking, diverse experience, and, well, we're pretty limited, unfortunately, on diverse programs that you're actually enrolled in, but that you've got some similar interests, some similar things that you want to explore. And I'm going to give you a theme to prompt you for what it is that you're going to be looking at. So let me give you some examples. On a previous iteration, we've had groups that have been looking at manufacturing businesses. We've looked at tourism businesses. We've looked at education businesses. We've looked at Industry 4.0. We've looked at import and export businesses. The themes that I give you will be very broad. From that, you're going to work as a team and learn as much as you can to come up with a recommendation. So actually another one was food security. I don't think that was actually my theme. That just evolved out of the manufacturing idea that a group started with. And we're going to visit a whole lot of people. Some of them, or many of them, will be foreign companies that are operating in Vietnam. They might have been operating for a long period of time, or they might have been operating for a very short period of time. They go across a range of different business types. So we'll have some professional services. We'll visit with Ernst & Young. We'll visit a law firm, most likely. Our very first briefing will be, the second day we'll meet with Austrade and a local agent service company that will tell us about how you set up a foreign business in Vietnam, and they will also talk to us about what kind of government support Australian investors get from Austrade and what kind of risks and issues. We will meet with the people from the Australian Vietnam Chamber of Commerce. It's called AusCham Vietnam. And in fact, we'll probably go to drinks. You guys will go into that and do some networking drinks effectively with the AusCham people, and your mission there is to learn as much as you can from people who are actually doing business in Vietnam about what the opportunities they see are, what the risks they see are, what the difficulties are. A kind of SWOT analysis with a beer in your hand is what I'm thinking of. But we'll also interlace that with some academic content. In particular, on the first day, you'll get some economic briefing and some work around cultural norms and cultural differences, which will help you navigate this. This is the assignment that this is the main assignment that I want to talk about. I will go backwards. But so that you understand, it's important in order to do the first assignment that you understand what the focus is of the trip itself. And I guess if I can say one thing loudly and over again is, you will be on the go the whole time that we're in Vietnam, but I don't want you Googling anything. I do not want you opening computers and being in the library during that time. Your research and everything that you put into the presentation that you'll give on the last day should be based on what you see and what you do in the meetings that we have while we're in country. And then it's beforehand and afterwards that you'll supplement that with the academic materials and the reading. So what are these academic materials? Again, I'm trusting you guys to stop me if you need to ask questions or you want to make any observations. For those of you who are Australian-based students, so everybody who's on the webinar now, before you leave, you're going to be asked to do one of the brand new RMIT Microcredentials. In Canvas, there is a link that allows you to enroll in those. The one that you're being asked to do first is getting ready to study abroad. Now, because you're postgraduate students, it says it's going to take you 8 hours or something. It's not. You're going to fly through it much, much quicker than that because it's a general micro-credential. Your postgraduate students, you will get out of it a much more. I'm going to ask you to be a little bit patient with it because it will seem at the beginning like it's designed for very young people who still live with their mummies, who've never actually travelled abroad. But the reflection work that it asks you to do and the reading work is actually really valuable. And if you do that work well, it will really scaffold the rest of the first task. And for this first task, the micro-credential, it says 2.7% on the slide. I must have been having fat fingers this morning when I did this. It's actually 2.5% of your mark. If you do it, and you upload your micro-credential that says you've done it, I will give you full marks. Your Vietnamese contemporaries, these micro-creds, firstly, aren't relevant to them, but because they're not studying abroad, and secondly, unfortunately, at the moment, they're not available to students who are outside of Australia because of the way the licensing works. They are being asked to create a short video each, and that short video, which will be made available to the rest of you at some point, is basically they're being asked to tell you why investing in Vietnam is a good idea, what it is that they think. They're basically going to sell Vietnam to you. So your major pre-departure briefing is worth 27.5% of your overall mark. So assignment 1, broken up into 2 parts, worth 30%. 2.5% you get just for doing the task. If you don't do it, you'll miss out on 2.5 guaranteed marks. If you do it, you'll get full marks for it. So this pre-departure briefing or pre-departure reflection, call it what you will, is basically requires you to tell me what you propose to focus on when you're in country so that I can curate the experience as much as possible to suit what it is that you want to get out of it. So before the recording started, one of the students who was chatting with me said that their business now has recently moved into another Asian city, so they want to know more about what working with an Asian subsidiary would be like. So that's a perfect kind of focus point for your assignment. What you will be doing is looking at, well, what is it that you know you don't know now? So what do you want to inquire into more? And you will find there's a lot of reading. Much of it might be skimming for you. You might find that what you're going to do is focus your attention on the bits that are really matter to you. You might decide, and again, I'm not saying to this student, this is what you should do. I'm going from 1 to 100 without necessarily knowing what the gaps are. But if your particular interest was the HR implications, you might want to focus your reading and your preparation and your role in this process of putting an investment together on HR, on how would you staff an operation outside of your home country, if it's wholly owned. If it's not wholly owned, are you looking at a wholly owned subsidiary or are you looking at some kind of joint venture with somebody else? What do you need to know about the people who are reporting to you? What do they need to know about the things that you might do differently? How do you work out what's different? Those kind of questions are great questions to focus on as we go. Somebody else might be interested in the investment process all up. How would you structure an investment in Vietnam? Do you need to have a partner? If you do need to have, what do the laws say? As you know, Vietnam is it's a communist country. You cannot assume that the underpinning laws about the way that companies work, that taxes are paid, that contracts are enforced are the same as in Australia. And similarly, Vietnamese students who are in this course cannot assume that Australians who are doing business with them will have the same underlying assumptions as they do about how contracts will be enforced or about what approvals are given. One of the things I often point out is, and I bring some legal experience to this, is one of the things that really was a big learning for me in the first few years that I was working in China was, and it sounds really simple when you say it out loud, but there's this underlying different philosophy, and I don't know whether it's an Asian philosophy or a communist socialist philosophy, but the way that the law tends to work in a Western context is unless there is a law that says you can't do something, then you can pretty much do it. Where in a socialist communist environment, often it's the other way around. Unless there's a law that says you can do it or somebody has approved you doing it, then you probably can't do it. And that fundamental difference in the approach that people take to the way that they enter into contracts or enter into business relationships can really slow things down if we don't know how the legal system works. Now, our one lawyer is going to be really busy, and clearly our one lawyer, the expertise that they will bring is being an Australian lawyer. So the task for the lawyers will be to help the groups identify the potential for legal risks, and ultimately they will be recommending what kind of local legal advice would be required and what advice would be needed from Australian practitioners. So somebody who's interested in investment, for example, might be looking at, well, how would you fund an investment? What kind of returns would you be expecting? How would you work out what the growth is? Is an investment decision in Vietnam, in your particular industry, is it something that you would need to make or buy? Do you start from scratch and control everything from the outset? Or do you find a competitor or somebody who's in your value chain somewhere and purchase them so that you have a partner? Those are the kind of things that we'll be interested in teasing out in the report. So in order for me to work out where I'm going to focus you, I need to know what you want to learn, and I want you to try and stretch yourselves here. You guys are paying a lot of money to do very fancy degrees, and I don't want you to come into this degree with a whole lot of stuff you already know that you can repeat. What I'm looking for you to do is to really reflect deeply and say, okay, what would be useful to me? How can I stretch myself here? What can I learn? So that is the question. What do you want to learn? But in the words of JFK, ask not only what you can, what your CLN or your group or your project can do for you. Ask what you can do for your CLN. Ask yourself, how are you going to contribute? What are you going to bring to this exercise? So, a lot of guff on this slide, but I think I've actually explained it as much as I can. Probably should have had this one open instead of the last one. But while I'm here, does anybody have any questions about that? Who's excited? Does that sound fun?
Yeah, it sounds good, Kath.
Good to hear.
Sounds good, Kath, definitely.
Good. Well,
I'm excited.
good. I need excitement. I need my best executives on the case here. So get thinking about it. Think about what it is that you want to stretch from. Because if you're just regurgitating stuff you've learned somewhere else, I will find that out and I will be unimpressed, even if it's excellent work. But I would rather a quick and dirty back of the napkin strategy that is genuinely based on what you learn and what's going to be useful to you than a really high level schmick report that's been handed in somewhere else and got an HD. Because I want this to be real. We want to emulate the experience of actually making an investment decision as much as we can. And I'll throw you into hot water as we go from time to time too. It'll be fun, but it won't always be comfortable. I've talked to you about diversity before. Too many words on these slides, Kath. I think I've said all of that too. So what kinds of research or factors do you need to consider? So again, we need this to all come back to those course learning objectives, because that's what we assess you on. Effectively, when you've done this subject, future employer or somebody could be looking at the subject outline and say, okay, these are the things that this person should be able to do because they've done this subject. So the kinds of things that I'm expecting you to bring into it is to think about how a business plan is going to work. Now, again, as your business planning, I am not looking for a comprehensive 4-year out plan. I am not looking for a prospectus for fundraising. I am looking for a high-level strategy that demonstrates creativity and thought. So what I want you to be doing is observing what you see, taking with you the research about Vietnam and about developing countries and your own knowledge and interest, and saying, okay, in this particular market, we think there's an opportunity. We learned these things from talking to these people. And as a consequence, we think that there might be a niche here. Now, again, I will give you a theme, but the CLNs will be perfectly free to work from there. I am a very new model CEO. I am not going to be a micromanager. I want my best people to recommend the best investment. So again, you're going to think about the plan, but the artifact of the objective here is not the plan, but a strategic approach, a good decision, and a good recommendation. You're going to need to use a number of frameworks, and we will do a little bit of, well, a lot of you are MBAs, so you've all done design thinking, but we'll do a bit of design thinking refreshing while we're there. Hopefully I'll bring to it something that you haven't done before. The Vietnamese group I've taught design thinking too, but Gershwin, I wasn't your design thinking teacher, was I?
No, it was Kevin.
I'm much nicer than Kevin. You'll be fine. I'll come up with something new that you haven't done before.
Sure.
That's a high bar, by the way, to be nicer than Kevin. He's pretty damn nice. So again, what we'll do is we'll use some frameworks from design thinking, but probably the one that we'll spend our most time with, which should be very familiar to you guys as MBAs or EMBAs, is the business model canvas. And so probably when we go to Platinum Global, we've worked pretty closely with Platinum Global in the past. That's a really interesting company in the, they actually provide outsourced engineering services. So they're based in Ho Chi Minh in District 7, started by an Australian guy who effectively was going broke. He made roof trusses. And he was making roof trusses for buildings in Vietnam, taking advantage of the boom in building. And then effectively, he was going broke, and he realised he had some pretty good engineers and guys who were good with the software. So he started to get people in Australia to sort of outsource the engineering, not the design, but the actual engineering part to him. And then that business just went off. It's now, I think, 70% owned by Berkshire Hathaway. It's actually Berkshire Hathaway's biggest percentage ownership in a communist country anywhere in the world. Small investment for them, but still a significant one. And they put on 40 new staff members a month at the moment. They've had to they're growing at a really rapid rate. They only employ university graduates, and at this stage, they won't employ anybody who's worked anywhere else. They basically train from scratch. So they've got a really interesting model. It's not an Australian way of doing business, but it's not a uniquely Vietnamese way of doing business. I'm hoping we'll probably spend about 4 hours visiting them, having a look around at the way they work and meeting some of their staff. We'll probably do a couple of design thinking exercises with their staff so that you can start growing particularly around the business model canvas. So just so that you know. Again, all of these things are relevant. but this is your learning. So I am very comfortable if you pick something in particular that you want to focus on. As long as you're clear about that with me, I will do my damnedest to make sure that it works for you. At the same time, when you're doing this first assignment, I'm going to suggest that you have a really good look at the rubric and make sure that you use the rubric as a kind of guide to where you want to spend your time or your words as you're putting this assignment together. Roughly speaking, if something's worth 30%, then it's probably more important than something that's worth 10%. Now, and as I said that, I'm thinking demonstrating a willingness and effective planning to work effectively in multidisciplinary teams. Gee, I hate the way that's worded, but anyway, I've repeated what's in the CLO. That's clearly a very important thing, but I would be spending 10% or less of your essay talking about that. So think about the way that you put your paper together and use the rubric as a kind of structure. Speaking of structure, this, particularly when you don't have proper classes before, and it can be very overwhelming to just write a paper, particularly something that tells your teacher who you don't know something about yourself and what you want to get out of something. It requires a level of trust, and people can get a bit overwhelmed with it. What we have on the slide here is a quick and dirty sort of structure that is sensible and that makes it easy for me to find the things I'm looking for that let me give you a good mark. And by the way, I love giving people good marks. I won't do it unless you deserve them, but I don't want it to be a secret what it takes for you to get a good mark for these things. So this is a good sort of structure, starting with an introduction, starting with a little bit about who you are, why you're doing this course, what it is you want to get out of it, leading into the specific issues that are relevant to your discipline or the particular thing that you want to learn, that you want to explore, and then a practical section, what you actually plan to do, how you plan to explore the issues, what you'll be looking for, what kind of questions you'll ask, what are you going to do to record that information. One of the things that you might find useful is, and it is towards the end of the modules, but you might want to flick through it, is I put quite a lot of materials in there about reflective writing. Now, again, depending on your discipline and what subjects you've done, you might have done a fair amount of reflective writing in the past, but there are a number of different models that I've made available to you that will help you put this together in a way that will meet the academic standard. The next thing that I would be expecting to see is something about what kind of cross-cultural barriers you're expecting and how you're going to look out for them, what you think you're going to do, how you're going to manage that. This is important too because at the final assignment you're going to need to reflect back on what actually happened and whether it was what you expected or not. So getting this scaffolding right will help you again with the later assignment as well. And then the last thing I'd be looking for is, as I said before, what it is that you're going to bring to this. What's going to make you a really valuable team member? I'd like you to share that in a way that when I put the teams together, I can draw on that when I introduce you to your other team members so that I've got a really good sense of what it is that makes you different from the other team members as much as I can. But yeah, that's pretty much a good structure if you can live with it. Then, when we're in country, there's basically only one deliverable, worth 15%, and that's on the last day. On the last day, each team is going to give me a report, a presentation, and that's worth 15%. That's going to be followed up pretty soon afterwards, only the 15th of September, with a group report. And I will make sure that while we're in country that I give you quite a bit of guidance on what that group report needs to look like. When you get home, there'll be another micro-credential for the outbound students to do. This one is about unpacking your learning abroad experience. And again, doing that will really help you with scaffolding the reflective piece. The inbound students, I'm asking you to make another video, and this time, basically, given what you learn on the trip, or on the intensive, because it's not really a trip for you, is it? I'm going to ask you to make a really short video, 2 to 3 minutes will be enough, effectively telling or picking something that would be useful for foreigners who are coming to work and live in Vietnam, something that they need to know. Again, for all of this task, you get full marks just for doing it. And you can see I've copied and pasted the slide because that same typo, it says 2.7% is there. It's actually 2.5. Then your final assessment task is another reflection. You're asked to reflect on the impact that the tour has for you personally. Again, I will talk to you more about what I'm expecting there, but I think, well, I hope that you've seen that all of the other work that you're doing is leading to this report. It's scaffolding towards it. And really what I'm asking you to do is reflect on the experience, tell me what you've learned from it and how you're going to use what you've learned in the future. Even if at the end of the day what you've learned is that you know everything already and nothing is going to change. But I am interested in what surprised you, what you learned, what you're going to do differently in the future in particular. So my expectations of you, I want you to lean in. I want you to engage with it. I want you to play the game. I want you to really devote yourself for those 5 days. And I am going to make it as broad and as interesting and as much fun as I can. On the first night, what we will do is we'll have a little motorcycle tour. Everybody in Saigon gets around on the back of a bike. And so I've organised a tour. We've done this the last few years where we'll get to go on the back of a bike. We'll get taken around the city. Your guide, who will speak English, will explain the different things that we see. We'll see how ordinary people live their lives. And then we will eat some delicious food in different places and you'll get to learn a little bit about the place that you're in. We'll visit people in their offices. We'll observe the way that they're working. We'll visit factories. We will visit offices. It will be different. And there are a couple of activities that I've designed where you will effectively be working in your groups and moving around Saigon in your on your own. You will find that having some Vietnamese speakers amongst you will be very, very useful. But again, it's all about throwing yourself into the experience and really trying to get empathy for the experience of being either a foreigner trying to do business in Vietnam or a Vietnamese person trying to work with foreigners in that context. So that's what I wanted to tell you. You haven't interrupted me, so I've just gone the whole time. Questions, concerns, frustrations, excitement. Let's get back into the group.
Just one question regarding microcredential.
Yeah?
Where do I see that? Is that in the Canvas in assessments?
Yes, it's in the Canvas in assessments. The first, there'll be, so 1.1 as a group, it'll say you're either an inbound, it'll ask you if you're an inbound student to do one and an outbound student to do the other. Everybody who's talking to me now is outbound.
Yep.
So you will click on that and it'll give you a link. You actually have to enroll in the microcredential, which you can do. And then it's basically entirely online. You have a few little exercises to do. At the end, they will give you the credential, a little certificate. If you want to, you can put it on your LinkedIn profile. I suspect this is not a micro-credential you want on your LinkedIn profile, but I could be wrong. And all you have to do is submit then go back to our Canvas and submit their evidence that you've completed the micro-credential.
Yep, I can see that now.
Okay.
Pre-departure microcredential. Just one other question, please.
Yeah.
The idea itself in regards to the report, as opposed to the plan, the strategy and the argument, how much does the idea itself matter when it comes to awarding marks?
When are you talking about your pre-departure report or the idea that you'll be pitching to me at the end of the intensive?
Good question. I was thinking about the report that I need to submit before.
Okay, for the one before, the idea doesn't matter too much. And in fact, I'm really pleased you asked this question, because in your pre-departure reports, any of you who are really in love with your idea of what it is, so just say you're really interested in food security or food blockchain. I'm going to pick blockchain because a group a couple of years ago, the idea that they pitched was because they recognized that in Vietnam, a lot of people were very concerned about the origin of different foods that they ate. So they pitched an idea to create a blockchain business that was able to demonstrate the provenance of food for upper middle class Vietnamese buyers. One of the students was really in love with the idea of doing something with blockchain before he left Australia. And as it turned out, it worked. But I was very worried about that student, that it could, unless, you know, blockchain is a relatively specialist area, and unless it actually fitted with the bigger process, you know, it was a solution in search of a problem at that early stage. So being too in love with an idea at the early stage might set you up for disappointment. But by the time you're actually in country and your group is pitching, okay, Kath, your Wesfarmers size conglomerate should be investing hundreds of thousands or hundreds of millions of dollars or dong in my business idea. Yeah, I want the idea to be as good as it possibly can be at that stage. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'll just mute myself for others to ask questions. Thank you, Kath.
Any more questions?
Kath, Grant here. Do you have any recommendations as for, you know, booking the travel and the accommodation? I'm confident enough to book it directly, but is there a travel agent that you recommend for Vietnam? Or
There is. I can send you the details and put there's a travel agent in Footscray in Melbourne, which also works online, because you're based in Brisbane, aren't you? That does a lot of stuff with Vietnam and can do visas, etc. I think they're called Sunshine Travel or whatever. But look, quite frankly, it's pretty easy. When I go myself to Vietnam, when I'm working for the campus, because I teach design thinking for the Vietnam campus, I use Expedia and Booking.com pretty much every time because it's easy and I get good rates, and I find you'd be coming from Brisbane, but there are now, at the moment, there are direct flights from Melbourne to straight into Ho Chi Minh. Vietnam Airlines do it, and so does Jetstar. In fact, premium economy is not prohibitive cost. I pay for that when I'm paying for it myself. The university won't do that for me, so I'll be down the back of the plane. But yeah, so I would suggest Vietnam Airlines is a really good way of doing it. I think probably the best thing is to actually look at what it is that you need. And the other thing is, if there are a few of you going, you might even want to talk to each other about where you want to stay or sharing accommodation, because Airbnb is big and quite good or very good in Ho Chi Minh as well. So it might be that you know, some of you want to get an apartment or something like that if you want to operate that way. So I think the Grand, the Rex, and there's another one called the Hotel Majestic. I like those three hotels because a client of mine owns them, so I've been there a bit. And they're actually owned by, we might even meet with these guys as well. It's a state-owned enterprise Saigon Tourist, which is about to be privatised next year. So if I can get us talking to the people who are involved in the privatisation, which I'm hoping to do, then I'm hoping to have a meeting with them while we're there as well. But yeah, you're looking at 5-star hotel there, accommodation for about $100-120 a night, cheaper if you're on booking.com or things like that, actually. So yeah, it's not difficult to do. The other piece of advice I'd give everybody is to buy a cell phone SIM at the airport when you arrive. Data is ubiquitous. Wi-Fi is everywhere in Saigon. So if you don't have one, you'll be able to get onto Wi-Fi really easily. But everything will be insecure. So you wouldn't want to do banking or deal with passwords or anything like that in a cafe. Well, I wouldn't, but that could be just me. And yeah, at the end of the day, for around $10 you'll have more data and phone calls than you need while you're there, and you'll find that really useful. Downloading the Grab app is also a good idea. Put a little bit of, you can set that up to pay with your credit card as you go, but being able to get around, if you're brave, you can do that on the back of a bike, otherwise in a cab. Look, Saigon it's a big city. It's growing very fast. There are many parts of it that are very, very different from Melbourne or Brisbane. You will feel like you are in a very different place, but it's just growing it exponentially, and your creature comforts will be relatively easy to come by, but the beer and massages will still be cheap.
Kath, there was also mentioned that the day before we start is a public holiday. How does that affect travel and, I guess, arrival if I was to plan to land that day?
I don't know. I'm going to come the Tuesday before, so I'll be there a little bit in advance. I don't know how it's going to address it. I haven't seen. The thing is, a lot of people who live and work in Saigon will go out of Saigon for a holiday. It's effectively their Independence Day. It's the anniversary of the tanks going in and the fall of or the fall of the Americans at the end of what you will hear referred to over there as the American War, as opposed to the Vietnam War. So a lot of people go out. As a consequence, I don't think it's going to be particularly difficult. It might be a little bit slower to get a cab, but certainly flights in, it's not that big a holiday for coming back. But again, get onto booking as soon as you can.
Okay, and the only other thing, was the visa, Kath. So I've already investigated, and I was a bit concerned that I was onto a scam because I've been harassed non-stop because I haven't gone through with it. You probably
are onto a scam. You can get them online, but you do need to be really careful about that. And again, that's why the best way is to actually send your passport to the consulate in Canberra and get it back. There are a couple of visa services. I know there's one that Flight Centre runs through Flight Centre, but there are a number. I would definitely, if you're going with a visa service, go with an Australian company. Vietnam's one of the very few places where you can't arrive without a visa. So there's very few places in Asia where these days you buy a visa on arrival, but that's not the case with Vietnam, and they can take a little bit of time to process it. The upside is you get a lovely big stamp in your passport. Makes you look like you've been somewhere.
I did have one thing to mention about that because I checked the visa requirements as well. But I'm actually from Mauritius.
Oh, right. Beautiful country.
Yes, it is. It is. Well, in the pictures at least. When you live there every day, not as much.
So how did that work for you with it would still be it's still the same process, I assume, packaging up your...
Yes, but I can't actually get an online visa. What I have to do is get, I forgot what it's called, but it's some sort of letter of approval, which says that once you get there, then that gets turned into your visa.
Okay, I have seen those. You might, I'm on the recording, I'm going to say I am not allowed to give you advice in relation to
Yeah,
that.
of course not.
But if you want to send it to me, because the thing is, sometimes that's what the scams do too. If you
Yeah.
want to just double check it, because it would be, we really need to know. From your points of view, you're not working over there. They don't really have a visiting student visa, and you, even though you are going to Vietnam to study a course, the course that you're studying is offered in Australia, so you're not looking for a student visa.
Yeah, it would just be a tourist
ordinary
visa.
tourist visa basically works. It's the equivalent of attending a conference.
Yeah, yeah.
You're asked about it, that's what it is. You're attending a conference effectively.
Yeah.
Kath, just a quick one. What's a good price range for a flight to Vietnam from Melbourne, in your opinion, approximately?
Oh, look, the university just paid for mine last week at about $900, including taxes return, as an economy flight. I've got flights, premium economy flights in November that I paid for a while ago at about $1,200. So I've seen them advertised as low as $600, but every time I go and click on those, there'll be ridiculous dates that don't work. But yeah, I've seen them even lower than that.
Some of the ones I've seen were probably in the range of $700 to $900, I would say, in what I've searched so far. I haven't booked my flights yet.
The thing I should say, though, is that when I look, I tend to tick the box for least number of stops and shortest amount of travel. So if you're prepared to do long stopovers, you can get them quite cheap.
Yeah, that's what I found as well.
Okay, Kath, thank you very much, and nice to meet the other members, Grant and Gershwin. I'll have to go, so have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Well, we've got a couple of others that will be joining us, but yeah, we're going to be a pretty tight little group, I think, so we should have a lot of fun, I hope.
Great, sounds good, and I'm excited.
Good, I'm excited too.
Great. Well,
all right,
have a good
I'll end
evening,
this up
all.
here, and please do not be shy about touching base. And if you haven't, I think you're all in the WhatsApp group now. So yeah, if you've come across good flights or issues about visa, share it there. It's probably easier than using Canvas, to be quite frank.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you later, people.
Thanks, Kath.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Kev.
Bye.